The rockets blew through the front of the trailer and the back of the cab, passing on either side of a white-faced Jill while she was driving. Either side. By some miracle worthy of every holy book ever written, both rockets missed her. "Jesus and Mary!" I shouted. I slid through the hole where the cab wall used to be and sat down next to Jill. She was white as cotton, shaking like an AK on full auto, gripping the wheel so hard I half expected her to leave indentations. First rule of talking to the driver when the driver is in shock. "It missed you, Jill. You're all right." She nodded very slowly, but didn't speak. I tried another tack. "Wouldn't you like a break from driving?" She nodded again. "Well, why don't you pull over there?" I said, pointing to a tree-lined side street. There was nothing around here. We could pull the plug on the teleporter trailer. Jill pulled over. "Would you stay up here on watch while I return to the others?" I asked. She finally spoke. "Yes, I will fly." I patted her on the shoulder, glad she'd addressed me that way. I suspected she would be driving more conservatively after this. I decided not to ask her about the car. As Jill parked and sobbed, I crawled back into the trailer. "Our new convenient modern cab," I said. "Lots of ventilation makes it easier than ever to move back and forth." My attempt at gallows humor fell on Adder's ears. "Fly," said Arlene, voice shaking. "Maybe we should acquire another vehicle." "Why?" I asked. She stared at me dumbfounded. "Let's take a closer look at our new critter," I continued. On first contact, it appeared to have no skin at all, but close examination showed a thin layer of almost transparent epidermis. Close up, it looked a man in the terminal stages of starvation. "I'd hoped we wouldn't see anything like this," said Arlene. Albert started to get the drift and asked, "You never saw one like this in space?" "No," I answered, "but we saw a place where they manufactured creatures on an assembly line." "And living blocks of flesh," said Arlene. "I'm certain it was human flesh. Experiments creating human flesh." "The evils of science," said Albert. I saw Arlene tense up, but this time it was my turn. "There's no putting that genie back in the bottle, my friend. We master everything the universe offers, or we're wiped out. Another failed experiment. No happy medium or ignorant bliss." He held up his gun. "Maybe you're right," he said. "This weapon would be black magic to Joseph Smith. I should pick on the engineers instead of the scientists. Some scientists say that some things we can do, we must never do." "Such as?" asked Arlene. "Godless genetic manipulation," he answered. "That's what we're fighting, isn't it?" "Scientists who talk that way are the worst traitors to the human race," said Arlene. "I don't really mind religious people being afraid of new discoveries," she said, "but scientists are supposed to know better. This enemy's greatest power is biology. They've turned it into a super weapon. If that means we have to learn to use it ourselves, then we have to. Otherwise, we're disarmed." "You'd turn us into monsters like that?" asked Albert, pointing at the dead one. "Or our children?" he added. "No, of course not," she said. "But why should you object to genetically engineering angels?" "Because they already exist and will help us in the hour of need." "Mexican standoff," I said. "This head cutting is officially declared a tie. Now, shall we return to the matter at hand?" "Well, Fly," purred Arlene, "whose turn is it to name this sucker?" "I'm sure it's yours." I lied. She must have already decided, because right away she said, "That's easy. A bony." "Brilliant," I said. "Don't you think so?" I asked Albert.
I guess, he said. I guess we should be able to tell them apart.
Albert, would you mind checking on Jill? I asked. He was happy to get out of there. As Arlene and I started decoupling the trailer, I whispered in her ear, "So what do you think?"
I think they're getting closer to copying our real human form. Even the stupid clothes are a dangerous advance. The goal of the aliens is probably to create false humans. If they succeed, they can infiltrate the areas not under alien control, like Salt Lake City.
We can expect better frauds as time passes, I said. Now, let's get to the next town along the railroad line, hop a train, and continue to LA. Albert and Jill were glad to hear the new plan. While Arlene and I were busy worrying each other, Albert had helped calm Jill down, to the point where she insisted on doing whatever driving remained. Fortunately, it was a sleeper cab for partnered driving. We squeezed in, Arlene and Albert in the back, me up front with Jill, and set off down the road. We passed a score of alien patrols, but the truck must have had the mark of the beast on the grill, for none of them threw us a second glance. The next town along the line was Buckeye. We ditched the truck cab, then waited for night. We found an alley and enjoyed the busy sounds of nightlife in this modern world. Troop trucks every few minutes, the tramping of little zombie feet, screams of pain, howled orders from hell princes, and the occasional, earth-shaking tread of steam demons. Even more soothing to our shattered nerves were mechanical sounds that reminded me of the Spider Mind, evidently a smaller model. I wondered if this one got better mileage.
Have you noticed an odd thing? Whispered Arlene.
You mean besides everything? I replied.
The aliens generally seem to know when humans are around, she said.
I hadn't thought about it before, but the facts supported her. How?
Remember that lemony smell of theirs, right?
She continued her line of argument.
What if we smell as bad to them? They might detect us by the odor we give off. Maybe they deliberately give the reworked zombies that odor, so they can tell them apart from living humans.
You know, AS, if the aliens start manufacturing infiltrators, they sure as hell can't smell like zombies. That would be a dead giveaway. My heart bled for the technical difficulties faced by the alien Imagineers. The importance of having Arlene and yours truly on this mission was the background we brought with us. Remembering how we had turned the monsters against each other upstairs, I figured we could try it again when the time came. In fact, it should be even easier to turn the monsters against the new infiltrators. They wouldn't smell wrong enough. Meanwhile, there was the little matter of our immediate survival and carrying on to LA, and that meant hopping a freight as soon as possible. I have another plan, I told my loyal troops. I hoped it would sound as good to me as I was about to make it sound to them. We waited for another truck to go by before settling down to the conference. It was easy to size up the strengths and weaknesses of our little foursome. Jill was brainy but callow. Albert was forthright, strong, reliable, stalwart, and no dummy. But he had yet to show the special kind of intelligence and instincts needed for command. Another reason for the President of the 12 not to press about who would command this mission. Arlene was cynical and sophisticated, the best woman soldier I'd ever known. But at some deep level, she lacked a certain badness that was so much a part of yours truly that I didn't have to think about it. The reason for me to be in charge was that I wouldn't hesitate to sacrifice all our lives if I thought it would make a difference in winning a crucial battle in this war. Arlene could make the same decision, but she'd hesitate, where I wouldn't. In a strange way, I was the safest of the adults to befriend the teenager, because no friendship or emotional ties would cloud my military judgment. With all that Arlene and I had faced up to this point, I counted myself fortunate that we had survived. I was also glad that I hadn't needed to be a perfect bastard. Yet. The truck passed, and they waited to hear the plan. You all know that we must infiltrate the train station and stow away on an outgoing train. The risk will increase once we do this. Let me point out that until we reach the enemy computers, Jill is the only one not expendable. After she retrieves the data, everyone is expendable. So long as one of us survives to get it through to the War Technology Center, get it out to Hawaii. They'll find you.
Yes,
said Arlene calmly. Albert nodded. Jill stared wide-eyed as my words registered. I continued. I noticed a number of abandoned grocery stores as we were working our way in. I don't know if zombies still eat human food, but I doubt it. And I'm certain the monsters don't.
Maybe the aliens can't digest what we eat,
said Albert.
Well,
mused Arlene,
they can eat us, and we are what we eat.
She was being her usual grisly self, but I was the only one who smiled. Whatever, I said. So here's the plan. Albert, you buzz to one of these stores and collect all the rotting lemons you can.
I get it,
he said.
That'll smell like those zombies we gunned down. Like all zombies,
said Arlene.
And confuse their sniffers.
He finished his thought.
Arlene, would you come with me?
He paused, as if surprised at what he'd said. He looked at me, remembering our informal chain of command.
Is it all right if she comes with me?
He asked.
I mean, if it's okay with her.
He stared at her a little sheepishly. I was going to assign you one of us, I said. So long as there are 4 of us, it's crazy for one to go off alone. We'll always pair off when we have to separate.
I'd like to go with Albert then,
said Arlene in an even tone of voice, betraying nothing. Fine, I said. Jill and I will wait here until you return. We'll assume you've run into trouble if you're not back by 2200. Among items I was grateful for, we still had functional watches. Who gave a damn what day of the week or month it was any longer? The importance of a wristwatch was to coordinate activity. Jill and I watched as A&A checked their weapons and moved out. They ran across the open space, Arlene first, Albert bringing up the rear, and then I could breathe again.
When do we move out?
Asked Jill. In a moment. We're still safe here. The word safe triggered something in her.
I hadn't thought about it until what you said, but I don't like being more...
critical to the mission.
Uh-huh. Critical. It feels weird.
Don't worry, I said. After you've done your hacker bit, you have permission to die with the rest of us. I tried for a light tone of voice, but the words sounded wrong.
I'm not afraid to die,
she said. I know you're not. You did great in the truck, the way you kept driving. I'm proud of you. Her whole body relaxed when I told her that. I figured she could handle some more of my deep thoughts. Arlene and I had been through so much together that there were things I could say easier to the new recruit. Cowardice is usually not the problem in war, Jill. Most people have more guts than they realize. Most can be trained to do all right.
What's the problem then?
She asked through slitted eyes. I looked up and down the alley. We were still alone, and it was a pleasure to hear the sounds of demonic industry muffled and distant. The danger was at arm's length, a good place to keep it as long as possible. In a way, we're lucky to be fighting monsters.
Lucky?
She half shouted. Keep your voice down.
Sorry.
Fighting monsters makes it easy. Up to now, all the wars on Earth have been between human beings. That's much harder. Her face scrunched up as she pondered what I said. It was like watching thoughts march across her face.
I could never hate human beings the way I hate the demons,
she said. You're lucky to feel that way, I said.
How does fighting monsters make it easier?
She threw at me.
They're harder to kill than people.
We don't take any prisoners, I said. We don't have to worry about any of that. And if we did take one, we don't have to decide whether we should torture him. Hell, we don't even know if they have a nervous system like ours.
Torture?
She asked, wide-eyed again. Then she thought about it.
I could torture them.
To get information? I asked.
To pay them back for what they've done.
Could you torture humans if they'd done the same things?
I don't know,
she said.
What kind of torture?
Looking at her, I remembered an officer who briefly passed through Paris Island as my class officer before moving on to intelligence, maybe even the CIA. Who the hell knows? He took a whole slate of medical courses, though he had no interest in being a doctor. He had a weak, limp handshake. He probably couldn't fight his way out of a revolving door. He scared the living crap out of me. I figured I'd given a 14-year-old enough to chew on for one day. Any kind. I didn't elaborate.
I think I could torture any humans who join the aliens,
she said. Then you're home free, I said. I don't think the enemy is doing any recruiting except for zombies. She brightened.
And we know what to do with them, don't we, Fly?
We sure do. I tried out one of my playful punches on the kid's arm, like I did with Arlene. She pulled away at first, then sort of apologetically punched back. She gave off all the signs of having been abused once. By human beings, probably. Human beings always confuse the issue. Now, it was time for us to hurry up and wait.